In the United States of America, the laws governing what you can buy, sell, and consume are famously permissive. If you are 18 years old, you can legally walk into a store and purchase a high-powered semi-automatic rifle. You can buy fireworks capable of producing explosive blasts. You can purchase food loaded with synthetic chemicals and dyes that have been outlawed in dozens of other countries due to health risks. But there is one specific, tiny item that you cannot legally buy. If you attempt to bring it across the border, you can be detained, your property can be confiscated, and you can face a fine of up to $2,500 per item. This contraband is not a weapon, a toxic chemical, or a dangerous narcotic. It is a hollow milk chocolate egg containing a small plastic capsule with a toy inside. The Kinder Surprise egg is the most popular candy in Europe, sold in over 170 countries, and beloved by billions of children worldwide. Yet, in the most powerful nation on earth, it is treated as a dangerous threat to national safety. This is the story of the most absurd food ban in modern history, and how a small chocolate egg exposed the bizarre, contradictory way a government decides what is safe and what is forbidden. To understand how this chocolate egg became a symbol of international smuggling, we must go back to its birthplace in the northern hills of Italy. In the early 1970s, Michele Ferrero, the visionary head of the Ferrero Company and the creative mind behind global sensations like Nutella and Ferrero Rocher, noticed a peculiar pattern in Italian culture. Every spring, parents bought their children large, beautifully decorated hollow chocolate eggs for Easter. Hidden inside these eggs were small toys or trinkets. To children, this was the highlight of the year. The chocolate was sweet, but the real thrill was the mystery of the crack. However, these Easter eggs were expensive, seasonal, and disappeared from store shelves as soon as the holiday ended. Ferrero asked a simple, radical question. Why should children only experience the joy of Easter once a year? Why could they not have it every single day? He set out to create a small, affordable chocolate egg that could be sold year-round. It was a massive engineering challenge. The chocolate shell had to be thin enough to break easily but sturdy enough to survive shipping and handling. The toy had to be small enough to fit inside the egg but complex enough to be engaging. In 1974, the company launched the Kinder Surprise. The design was brilliant. The egg was made of 2 layers of chocolate, a milk chocolate exterior and a sweet white milk cream interior, representing the wholesome nature of milk. Inside the hollow center was a bright yellow plastic capsule, designed to mimic the yolk of a real egg. Inside the yolk was a tiny, disassembled toy that children had to build themselves. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Kinder Surprise became a cultural phenomenon across Europe. Children did not just buy the candy to eat it, they bought it to collect the toys, to trade them with friends, and to feel the rush of finding out what was hidden inside the yellow yolk. Within a decade, Ferrero was producing billions of eggs per year. It became a staple of childhood in Europe, Asia, South America, and Canada. But in the United States, the shelves remained empty. The pre-war law. The ban on Kinder Surprise eggs in the United States is not a modern reaction to a recent tragedy. It is the result of a piece of legislation written nearly 40 years before the first Kinder egg was even invented. In 1938, the United States Congress passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. The early 20th century in America was a time of unregulated and often dangerous consumer goods. Food manufacturers, operating with little oversight, frequently used toxic dyes, cheap fillers, and unsanitary processing methods. To save money, candy makers sometimes embedded cheap metal toys, glass marbles, or wooden trinkets directly inside sweets to appeal to children. The results were disastrous, leading to numerous cases of choking, poisoning, and internal injuries. To protect the public, Congress inserted a strict, unyielding clause into the 1938 Act. Section 402, d. 1, stated that any confectionery product is legally considered adulterated, and therefore illegal to sell, if it contains a non-nutritive object embedded within it. The law was designed to stop manufacturers from hiding metal pins or glass marbles inside cheap candies. It was a logical, necessary safety measure for its time. But the language of the law was absolute. It did not distinguish between a loose metal shard hidden in cheap taffy and a toy safely sealed inside a protective plastic capsule that was then surrounded by chocolate. Under the letter of the law, because the plastic capsule is a non-food item inside a confection, the Kinder Surprise is classified as an adulterated food product. When the Kinder Surprise grew into a global empire in the late 20th century, Ferrero prepared to launch the product in the lucrative United States market. But they were met with a wall of federal bureaucracy. The Food and Drug Administration looked at the 1938 law, looked at the chocolate egg, and declared it illegal. The ban was set in stone. The Border Patrol and the chocolate smugglers. For decades, the United States government has maintained a zero-tolerance policy toward the importation of Kinder Surprise eggs. As international travel became more accessible, millions of Americans traveling to Europe or crossing the border into Canada discovered the forbidden chocolate eggs. They bought them for their children, packed them in their suitcases, and tried to fly home. What followed was a decades-long game of cat and mouse at American borders. United States Customs and Border Protection officials were trained to search for the chocolate eggs. In airport customs halls and border checkpoints, federal officers routinely confiscated Kinder eggs from unsuspecting families, tourists, and immigrants. In some years, customs officials reported seizing tens of thousands of eggs at the Canadian border alone. The stories of these encounters are bizarre. In 2011, a couple driving from Vancouver to Seattle was stopped at the border. During a search of their car, border officers found 6 Kinder eggs in the trunk. The couple was detained, questioned for hours, and threatened with a potential fine of $15,000 before the eggs were confiscated and destroyed. In 2012, 2 men returning to the U.S. from Canada were stopped, and their vehicle was searched. Officers discovered the chocolate eggs, leading to a long detention and a formal warning letter from the government. To the rest of the world, this border policing looked like a comedy. The idea of armed border agents searching bags for hollow chocolate eggs seemed like a parody of government overreach. But to the federal agencies responsible for enforcement, the threat was treated with absolute seriousness. The official stance of the Consumer Product Safety Commission was clear: the toy parts inside the capsule posed a significant choking hazard to children under the age of 3. The selective policing of danger. To evaluate the validity of this safety concern, we must look at the actual data. Since the product's launch in 1974, billions of Kinder Surprise eggs have been consumed worldwide. Over a 50-year period, there have been roughly 10 reported choking deaths globally linked to the toys inside the eggs. Each of these events was a profound tragedy, almost always involving a very young child who had been left unsupervised with the small toy parts. But safety is always a matter of relative risk. In the United States, the Consumer Product Safety Commission does not ban hot dogs, grapes, hard candies, or balloons, despite the fact that these items are responsible for thousands of pediatric choking deaths every year. Hot dogs alone account for nearly 17% of all food-related choking deaths in American children. Yet, a hot dog is not considered an adulterated food product under the 1938 law because the meat itself is the hazard, not an embedded plastic toy. This reveals the central paradox of the ban. The law ignores the actual statistical danger of a food item and instead focuses entirely on the technical classification of its ingredients. A child is statistically far safer playing with a Kinder Egg toy than eating a hot dog or playing with a common latex balloon. But the balloon and the hot dog remain legal, while the chocolate egg remains a federal offense. Furthermore, the United States permits the use of various food dyes, chemical preservatives, and growth hormones in meat that have been banned across the European Union due to links to cancer, hyperactivity, and endocrine disruption. The regulatory system draws a line at a plastic capsule inside chocolate but allows chemical additives that affect millions of consumers daily. The compromise. For over 40 years, the Ferrero Company tried to find a way to enter the massive American market without violating the strict 1938 law. In 2017, they finally engineered a solution. They introduced the Kinder Joy. The Kinder Joy is a radical redesign of the classic egg. Instead of a chocolate shell containing a plastic capsule, the Kinder Joy is a plastic egg that is split down the middle into 2 completely sealed, independent halves. One half contains the food, a sweet milk and cocoa cream dessert with 2 crispy wafer bites, eaten with an included plastic spoon. The other half contains the toy. The toy and the food never touch, they are separated by a physical, plastic barrier. Because the non-nutritive object is not embedded within the food, the Kinder Joy complies with the letter of the 1938 law. The product was a massive commercial success in the United States, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue within its first year on the shelves. Americans could finally buy a version of the Kinder Egg at their local grocery store. But to anyone who grew up with the original Kinder Surprise, the Kinder Joy is a poor substitute. The magic of the original was the surprise, the physical act of breaking the chocolate shell to reveal the yellow yolk inside. By separating the toy from the chocolate and placing them in plastic compartments, the mystery was diminished. The United States did not get the Kinder Surprise, it got a bureaucratic compromise. The Contradiction of Control. The story of the Kinder Surprise ban is more than just a quirky piece of trivia. It is a window into the contradictions that define human societies and their laws. We live in a world where governments must balance the safety of their citizens with personal freedom. But often, the systems we build to protect ourselves become rigid, captured by historical laws that no longer make sense in a modern context. A law written to stop 19th-century food fraud remains on the books, preventing 21st-century children from enjoying a globally beloved treat. Meanwhile, larger, more systemic health risks are ignored because they do not fit the narrow, technical definitions of pre-war legislation. The next time you see a Kinder Joy on a shelf, or hear a story of a tourist having a chocolate egg confiscated at the border, remember the lesson of the Kinder Surprise. It is a reminder that in the battle between common sense, corporate interests, and ancient bureaucracy, the bureaucracy usually wins, leaving us with a world where a rifle is easy to buy, but a chocolate egg is a crime.